Hey guys, Lord Naren White here, the Holy Ghost, the one true God. Back with you with the next video in my series, Great Expectations. Without further ado, returning to Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. Mr. Jaggers's eyes retired a little deeper into his head when I handed him the tablets, but he presently handed them over to Wemmick, with instructions to draw the check for his signature. While that was in course of being done, I looked on at Wemmick as he wrote, and Mr. Jaggers, poising and swaying himself on his well-polished boots, looked on at me. "I am sorry, Pip," said he, as I put the check in my pocket, when he had signed it, "that we do nothing for you." "Miss Havisham was good enough to ask me," I returned, "whether she could do nothing for me, and I told her no." "Everybody should know his own business," said Mr. Jaggers, and I saw Wemmick's lips form the word portable property. "I should have told her no if I had been you," said Mr. Jaggers, "but every man ought to know his own business best." "Every man's business," said Wemmick, rather reproachfully towards me, "is portable property." As I thought the time was now coming for pursuing the theme I had at heart, I said, turning on Mr. Jaggers, "I did ask something of Miss Havisham, however, sir. I asked her to give me some information relative to her adopted daughter, and she gave me all she possessed." "Did she?" said Mr. Jaggers, bending forward to look at his boots, and then straightening himself. "Ha! I don't think I should have done so, if I had been Miss Havisham, but she ought to know her own business best." "I know more of the history of Miss Havisham's adopted child than Miss Havisham herself does, sir. I know her mother." Mr. Jaggers looked at me inquiringly and repeated, "Mother?" "I have seen her mother within these 3 days." "Yes," said Mr. Jaggers. "And so have you, sir. You have seen her still more recently." "Yes," said Mr. Jaggers. "Perhaps I know more of Estella's history than even you do," said I. "I know her father, too." A certain stop that Mr. Jaggers came to in his manner. He was too self-possessed to change his manner, but he could not help its being brought to an indefinably attentive stop, assured me that he did not know who her father was. This I strongly suspected from Provis's account, as Herbert had repeated it, of his having kept himself dark, which I pieced on to the fact that he himself was not Mr. Jaggers's client until some 4 years later, and when he could have no reason for claiming his identity. But I could not be sure of this unconsciousness on Mr. Jaggers's part before, though I was quite sure of it now. "So, you know the young lady's father, Pip?" said Mr. Jaggers. "Yes," I replied, "and his name is Provis, from New South Wales." Even Mr. Jaggers started when I said those words. It was the slightest start that could escape a man, the most carefully repressed and the soonest checked, but he did start, though he made it a part of the action of taking out his pocket handkerchief. How Wemmick received the announcement I am unable to say, for I was afraid to look at him just then, lest Mr. Jaggers's sharpness should detect that there had been some communication unknown to him between us. "And on what evidence, Pip?" asked Mr. Jaggers, very coolly, as he paused with his handkerchief halfway to his nose. "Does Provis make this claim?" "He does not make it," said I, "and has never made it, and has no knowledge or belief that his daughter is in existence." For once, The powerful pocket handkerchief failed. My reply was so unexpected that Mr. Jaggers put the handkerchief back into his pocket without completing the usual performance, folded his arms, and looked with stern attention at me, though with an immovable face. Then I told him all I knew, and how I knew it, with the one reservation that I left him to infer that I knew from Miss Havisham was in fact knew from was excuse me, what I in fact knew from Wemmick. I was indeed I was excuse me, I was very careful indeed as to that. Nor did I look towards Wemmick until I had finished all I had to tell, and had been for some time silently meeting Mr. Jaggers's look. When I did at last turn my eyes in Wemmick's directions, I found that he had unposted his pen, and was intent upon the table before him. "Ha!" said Mr. Jaggers at last, as he moved towards the papers on the table. "What item was it you were at, Wemmick, when Mr. Pip came in?" But I could not submit to be thrown off in that way, and I made a passionate, almost an indignant appeal to him to be more frank and manly with me. I reminded him of the false hopes into which I had lapsed, the length of time they had lasted, and the discovery I had made, and I hinted at the danger that weighed upon my spirits. I represented myself as being surely worthy of some little confidence from him, in return for the confidence I had just now imparted. I said that I did not blame him, or suspect him, or mistrust him, but I wanted assurance of the truth from him, and if he asked me why I wanted it, and why I thought I had any right to it, I would tell him, little as he cared for such poor dreams, that I had loved Estella dearly and long, and that, although I had lost her, and must live a bereaved life, whatever concerned her was still nearer, and dearer to me than anything else in the world. And seeing that Mr. Jaggers stood quite still and silent, and apparently quite obdurate under this appeal, I turned to Wemmick and said, "Wemmick, I know you to be a man with a gentle heart, and I have seen your pleasant home, and am your old father, and all the innocent, cheerful, playful ways with which you refresh your business life. And I entreat you to say a word to me, Mr. Jaggers, to represent him that all circumstances considered, he ought to be more open with me." I have never seen two men look more oddly at one another than Mr. Jaggers and Wemmick did after this apostrophe. At first, a misgiving crossed me that Wemmick would be instantly dismissed from his employment, but it melted as I saw Mr. Jaggers relax into something like a smile, and Wemmick become bolder. "What's all this?" said Mr. Jaggers. "You with an old father, and you with pleasant and playful ways?" "Well," returned Wemmick, "if I don't bring him here, what does it matter?" "Pip," said Mr. Jaggers, laying his hand upon my arm and smiling openly, "this man must be the most cunning impostor in all London." "Not a bit of it," returned Wemmick, growing bolder and bolder. "I think you're another." Again they exchanged their former odd looks, each apparently still distrustful that the other was taking him in. "You're with a pleasant home," said Mr. Jaggers. "Since it don't interfere with business," returned Wemmick, "let it be so. Now I look at you, sir, I shouldn't wonder if you might be planning and contriving to have a pleasant home of your own, one of these days, when you're tired of all this work." We'll go ahead and stop there for this week. As usual, I want to say thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed. Please like, comment, and subscribe as it greatly helps the channel. Light be with you all. Take care. And thanks again.